Good day, dear students, and welcome back to another session of English Standard 10th. I hope you and your families are doing well by grace of the Lord. Today, we are going to learn a new poem, The Pulley, written by George Herbert. The Pulley, written by George Herbert. Let us learn more about him. George Herbert was a Welsh-born English poet. Welsh means the person that belongs to a country called Wales. Wales is a part of UK. He was an orator and Anglican priest by profession. He was born on 3rd April 1593. His poetry is related with the writings of the metaphysical poets, and he is acknowledged as a central figure, extremely popular, influential, the most vital British devotional lyricist. Throughout his life, he wrote religious poems characterized by an accuracy of language, a metrical flexibility, a clever use of imagery or concepts that was favored by the metaphysical poets. Metaphysical means it is a branch of philosophy that explores fundamental questions including the nature of concepts like being, existence, and reality. The poem The Pulley is based on the idea that God pulls humans towards himself with the pulley of restlessness. Here, the poet uses the extended metaphor of a pulley to explain the reason why man is always restless. The poem exhibits a strange but two-way relationship between God and his followers. Though he showers his worshippers with all his blessings, somewhere he also expects something in return. The soul of the poem is the uniqueness with which a religious notion is explored through a secular scientific image of a pulley. Now let us start with the poem. I will recite the entire poem. You can also read it along with me. 2.4 The Pulley. When God had first made man, having a glass of blessings standing by, "Let us," said he, "pour on him all we can. Let the world's riches, which dispersed lie, contract into a span." So strength first made a way, then beauty followed, then wisdom, honor, pleasure. When almost all was out, God made a stay, perceiving that alone of all his treasures, rest in the bottom lay. "For if I should," said he, "bestow this jewel also on my creature, he will adore my gifts instead of me, and rest in nature, not the God of nature. So both should losers be. Yet let him keep the rest, but keep them with repining restlessness. Let him be rich and very, that at last, if goodness lead him not, yet weariness may toss him to my breast." By George Herbert. The poem begins with the process of creation, where God instructs his advisors to grant man different blessings and boons. Now, let us take the poem part by part. Let's begin with the first stanza. When God had first made man, having a glass of blessings standing by, "Let us," said he, "pour on him all we can. Let the world's riches, which dispersed lie, contract into a span." Here, the poet is saying that when God first made man, he had a glass of blessings, and he thought, "I will pour all the blessings on the man, and all the world's riches shall be his, and which are right now dispersed, but I will gather them, collect them, and give them all to his man. And look at the last line, contract into a span. Span means which is a distance between 2 points. Basically, he is using a scientific term. That is, he is saying here that all the treasures of the earth which lay scattered should be collected and concentrated in a small space he has created, which is man. That means God has planned for the ultimate goodness of man. That is why he created man by giving him all the priceless gifts. By that, man could be fully contented throughout his life in all the directions and all the times. Now let us see the figures of speech. The first one, when God had first made man, its alliteration. The sound of the letter M is repeated for poetic effect. Second, having a glass of blessings standing by, its metaphor. The blessings are directly compared to the liquid kept in the glass that can be poured out. Here second figure of speech is alliteration. The sound of the letter B is repeated for poetic effect. Third, let us, said he, pour on him all we can. Its inversion. The words are rearranged for poetic effect. The correct order of words should be, let us, he said, pour on him all we can. The next one, let the world's riches which dispersed lie. Again its inversion. The words are rearranged for poetic effect, maintaining the rhyme scheme. The correct order of words should be, let all the world's riches which lie dispersed. The second figure of speech here is alliteration. The sound of the letter L is repeated for poetic effect. Let us see the second stanza. Here in this stanza, the poet describes the gifts that are given to man. So strength first made a way, then beauty followed, then wisdom, honor, pleasure. When almost all was out, God made a stay, perceiving that alone of all his treasures, rest in the bottom lay. Here, the poet says that God gave man everything that he had to offer, such as strength, beauty, wisdom, honor, and pleasure. After God gave all these qualities, Herbert states that God stopped for a while. There was something that he held back at the bottom of the glass, and that was rest. Because God perceived that it was his greatest treasure, so he did not give rest to man. Let us see the figures of speech. So strength first made a way, then beauty followed, then wisdom, honor, and pleasure. There are three figures of speech for these lines. First one, personification. The qualities of strength, beauty, wisdom, honor, and pleasure have been given the animate quality of movement to give a vivid image of the process of creation. The second one, climax. The ideas, beauty, wisdom, honor, and pleasure are arranged in an increasing order of importance. And the third one is alliteration. The sound of the letter S is repeated for poetic effect. Next line. When almost all was out, God made us stay. Here the figure of speech is alliteration. The sound of the letter A is repeated for poetic effect. The last line, rest in the bottom lay. Again here there are three figures of speech. First one, personification. The inanimate attribute of rest is given the human quality of laying to create a vivid image of the process of creation. Second, pun. The word rest has two meanings. It means remaining and it also means the gift of rest. The third one is tautology. The word rest and lay means the same thing. Let's study the third stanza. For if I should, said he, bestow this jewel also on my creature, he would adore my gifts instead of me, and rest in nature, not the God of nature. So both should losers be. Here in this stanza, God states that if He were to bestow the treasures of rest, that is contentment, to man, then man would adore the gifts given by God instead of adoring Him. Man will then rest in nature. Here, nature means his life. So, man will actually rest in his life instead of realizing his devotion to God who created nature. God thought if He granted human beings with the blessing of rest, that is contentment, they will love the gifts that He has given them more than they would love Him. God feared that giving humans the quality of being content and happy with their achievements and wealth would make them forget about Him. Man will be comfortable in his life and will forget his Creator. This way, man will lose his connection with God and God will lose his power over man. Let us see the figures of speech. For if I should, said he. Here it is inversion. The words are rearranged for poetic effect. The correct order of words should be, for if I should, he said. Next, bestow the jewel also on my creature. Metaphor. The gift of rest is directly compared to something precious such as a jewel. Next is, he would adore my gifts instead of me. It's alliteration. The sound of the letter M is repeated for poetic effect. The next line, and rest in nature, not the God of nature. There are two figures of speech here. Repetition, first one. The word nature has been repeated to emphasize on the idea of man worshipping nature instead of God. And second is alliteration. The sound of the letter N is repeated for poetic effect. Next is, so both should losers be. Its inversion. The words have been arranged in an inverse manner to add a dramatic effect to the poet. The correct order should be, so both should be losers. And the second one, alliteration. The sound of the letter B is repeated for poetic effect. Let us study the last stanza. Yet let him keep the rest, but keep them with repining restlessness. Let him be rich and weary, that at last, if goodness lead him not, yet weariness may toss him to my breast. The poet explains here that God knew that riches given by him one day will result in spiritual agitation. In man, that will also lead him to fatigue. Having got tired of his material gifts, man would unavoidably turn to God. God, being omniscient and prophetic, knew that ultimately mortal man would be prone to laziness. Laziness will then be the pull that God will need to bring him back. The poet explains further that man had all the materialistic treasures. He was also burdened with feelings of discontentment and fatigue. Discontentment that came from what he didn't possess, and fatigue from handling his materialistic possessions. Thus, not because of his goodness, but for seeking satisfaction and solace, man would always return to God and pray to him for comfort. In this poem, one can say that withholding rest from man, God will eventually act as a force that will hoist or draw mankind towards him. Let us see the figures of speech in this stanza. First one, but keep them with repining restlessness. Alliteration. The sound of the letter R is repeated for poetic effect. Let him be rich and weary. Here there are two figures of speech. First one, antithesis. The two contrasting ideas, rich meaning comfort and weariness meaning tiredness, are placed in the same line. Second, paradox, opposite ideas of man being rich and weary at the same time are used together in the line. Next one, if goodness lead him not, yet weariness. Here there are three figures of speech. First one, inversion. The words in the line are arranged in an inverse manner to add to the poetic effect. The correct order of the words should be, if goodness does not lead him. Second one is personification. An inanimate object, that is goodness, has been given the human quality of leading. And the third one is antithesis. Here, the two contrasting ideas, goodness, meaning the good nature of man, and weariness, which denotes tiredness, are placed in the same line to indicate the irony of the situation. And the last one, that is the last line, may toss him to my breast. Here there are two figures of speech. First one, hyperbole. The use of the word toss is to exaggerate the idea of bringing man close to God. And the second one is synodoc, part for the whole, because the term my breast symbolizes God himself. The rhyme scheme of the poem is A B A B A. What message do we get from this poem? The poet says that God provided man with everything he could crave for in his life. His love further blessed man with strength, wisdom, beauty, honor, and pleasure, expecting man to worship him, that is God, who gives him everything. Perceiving that man will get greedy and worship nature and not the God of nature, wherein both will be losers, he, that is God, withheld the treasure of rest, contentment, which would pull man, that is his creation, to God, the Creator. Just like a pulley lifts up a heavy object to the desired place. In other words, he makes man depend on him for survival, and man understands that without God, man is nothing. Thus we come to the end of the poem. I hope you all have understood the poem. Let us see the assignments now. First one, write an appreciation of the poem in a paragraph format by using the following points: title, poet, rhyme scheme, central idea, and figures of speech. Second, name and explain the figure of speech in the following lines. First one, rest in the bottom lay. Second, bestow this jewel also on my creature. Third, and rest in nature, not the God of nature. Thank you. God bless. Have a pleasant day.